On to DRJ's webinar series. I am Bob Arnold, president here at DRJ. We thank you for joining us today as we dive in a little bit deeper into a joint program brought to you by DRJ and Lambert Learning Institute. Today, Phil Lambert will be diving into the topic of 8 must-haves for the 2022 Extraordinary Practitioner. Everyone's phone has been muted, and we ask you to utilize the question panel you'll find on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll answer as many of these questions as possible at the end of the session. And now back to today's discussion on 8 must-haves for the 2022 Extraordinary Practitioner. Our speaker today and lead instructor for the DRJ Academy is Phil Lammert. I've had the pleasure of knowing and working with Phil for 20 plus years, and I'm proud to partner with him on the DRJ Academy program. Phil is the founder and program architect of Ripcord Solutions and Lambert Learning Institute. Phil is an expert in the business continuity planning field with over 25 years of experience. DRJ has partnered with Lambert Learning Institute in the design, development, and publishing of the BC Primer course, and more to come. Lambert Learning Institute is the industry leader in providing e-learning training to the continuity industry. And with no further introductions, I'd like to welcome and turn it over now to my good friend, Phil.
Hey, thanks, Bob. I really appreciate that intro. And I mean, we have known each other for a very, very long time. 8 must-haves for the 2020 Extraordinary Practitioner. That does sound like a mouthful. And if you're anything like me, I'm sitting here thinking, well, I just only need 1 or 2 things I must have or change for next year. But that is this time of year where we do want to make some changes, where we reflect on where we've been, and we want to envision where we want to go. I will tell you right up front here is that there is a download, and if you haven't downloaded it, please do, because a lot of the slides, the most important slides for sure, is in that download, as well as the detailed skills of one of the courses within the DRJ Academy. And if you're looking at the screen and you say 7 critical questions, and Phil, you only have 5, well, it actually ought to be 5 questions. I mean, I started out with 7. I go, that's way too many. And I didn't go back and change my screen. So it should be the critical 5 questions, or the 5 critical questions. When you look back on last year or this year still, what went right for your program? And you can set, and I usually do this exercise actually several times during the year, and especially when I'm working with a client, we're going to sit down with the client and says, okay, what is right with the program? What is wrong with the program? What is missing and should be there? What is confusing about the program? And what needs to change? And when you start quizzing people within the business unit, you're going to get different answers to these questions depending on the business unit itself. I use these questions also as part of the debrief of a tabletop exercise. So if you want to take these and use them as part of your tabletop exercise, that would be awesome. And right.
Phil, I'm going to jump in there. Sorry, it doesn't look like I believe you're on screen 2, but we're still showing screen 1. If you could try and advance your slides or exit practice mode and get our presentation mode and get back in, it might fix it.
Okay. My screen change?
Nope, I'm still seeing. Let me.
It says the application is paused at the top. There it goes. You should be able to see it now.
We do. Sorry about that, everyone. We're back on track.
Like I say, these things got a lot of buttons we have to push and all that kind of stuff. So mine.
Technology is wonderful when it works. All right, thanks.
All right, so here is the 5 critical questions that you want to ask yourself about next year. Of course, there's at least 1,000 other ones that you could ask, but I find that these are very intuitive as far as just simple, logical, And people have an easy way to answer it because it basically is just based on their opinion and not some knowledge that they must have as well. So let's just start out with that. What is right? What is wrong? What is missing? What is confusing? And what needs to change? Now my screen won't change, so there we go. Here's what we're going to talk about today, the 8 must-haves for 2020 program. Of course, we're always speaking about the Extraordinary Practitioner. I wanted to kind of go over a little bit of today's framework because there are a whole lot of different business continuity frameworks that are out there. So I wanted to make sure you and I were on the same page. I want to share with you a little bit about what we learned in 2021, which would be this year, and then provide to you some practical ideas that you might want to look at in 2022, and then we'll talk about some last words. Again, these slides are in that handout, and you can use them. Now, Lambert Learning Institute is fairly new. We haven't promoted a whole heck of a lot except through DRJ. It was founded in 2018. Again, I founded Ripcord Solutions in 2003. And we came up with a term called the power of one. We wanted to know how one practitioner can do the work of 3. And so we talked about the Power of One program for years, and then we flipped it over to be called the Rapid Continuity Program. So we're going to be talking a lot about the rapid continuity principles and all these other kind of things. Almost everything I do is going to be wrapped around what we've learned over the last 25 years. I'm going to talk a little bit about the BC Primer course, which is exactly what it looks like. It is a primer course. So everything within this course is what you need for your first year, or maybe even 2 years if you haven't been formally trained on how to do your program well within your organization. Then in 2022, Lambert Learning is going to have some advanced level courses, and we do advisory, program architect, and consulting, which is stuff that we've been doing forever. Okay, so coping in today's crazy world. One thing that I know we have all put up with is that the goalposts change, not only in the country, but even within our own organization itself. And I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the framework that I want to talk about today. I know you know these things, but it's good to have these things in the front of mind. And it's about the business that you work for, whether you're a consultant that maybe work for 3 or 4, or whether you work for 1, part-time, doing business continuity, full-time, maybe doing something else, and you got business continuity added on, or you're doing business continuity full-time. Business is all about results. And good business is continuously making progress toward those clear and specific results, usually coming from the senior leadership. Now, it'll definitely percolate down to your director, manager, vice president, whoever you directly report to, but they're all about making results. I'm going to tell you in a minute that if a company is not profitable, everybody loses. That continuous progress must be contributing to the strategic initiative or objective, their growth in customers, revenue, and profits, continue to save time, energy, and money, establish regulatory compliance, or to be a special interest of the senior leadership. So I want to ask you a question. Which of those does business continuity contribute to these outcomes? I'm going to ask the question again, and if you want to use the comment section to actually respond, does business continuity contribute to any of these outcomes? For some, and probably at least half of business continuity is regulation compliance. An auditor is coming out. Most of the time it's finance, energy, healthcare. There's a few other industries that the regulators are starting to come out to. So if you're doing business continuity to meet a regulatory compliance. How much money and resources do people want to invest in complying to regulations? It would be just like asking you, how much do you want to invest in insurance? Car insurance, life insurance, home insurance? Well, if you're anything like me, it's as little as possible. I want to get the best plan for as least as I can. And that's the same way that senior leadership look at all the different functions within an organization, including business continuity. Again, without profits, a company cannot exist and everyone loses. I know you experienced this even with friends over the last couple of years. The community loses its products and services. The government loses tax revenue. Its employees lose their jobs and seeing their friends almost every day. And its stakeholders and stockholders lose their investment and the time and energy that they've invested in that particular organization. And when profits are minimized or non-existent, senior leadership eliminates costs and expenditures in the area that will quickly alleviate that negative impact to the company. If you've been around business continuity for very long, you've experienced some of this stuff. And this is what I don't understand. And this is why I kind of laid this framework out. It's because at the beginning of the pandemic, and I don't hear anybody talking, we talked about it a little bit last year in the summer, maybe a little bit in the fall. I haven't heard anybody really talk about it since then. Why is it at the beginning of a worldwide crisis, a worldwide pandemic that was basically getting worse every day, if not every week, that from the beginning of that crisis where everybody was scared to the GBGs out of everybody. I'm trying to learn how to pronounce that. But anyway, even though they did a good job as a professional business continuity planner. So I said, well, there's got to be a reason. And two, there also has to be a way to make sure I don't live or lose my job. And I thought about that a lot because being a consultant for 15 years, that's how long Ripcord's been around, you learn how to contribute value to the company on a regular basis.
Phil, we're still on slide 5.
Yep, I haven't changed it yet, but thank you. Conventional standards and legacy strategies may have worked well yesterday, but now these processes demands to be re-examined, updated, and fine-tuned. And you've heard that for 1,000 times, especially over the last year or two. But how do we go about doing that? What are some of the, I mean, people can say that we can re-examine and we ought to reimagine, business continuity, but I'm sitting here with only a few years worth of experience and I go, I'm just trying to get my business continuity plans updated. So how do I go about doing that? I will tell you that it's going to continue to get worse as far as handling crises are concerned. It's not, things have changed. What companies are dealing with today are so far advanced than what we were dealing with even 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years ago. But the one thing about being an extraordinary practitioner is that it begins with knowing, breathing, and living the basic core concepts and fundamentals of business continuity. Now, I've talked a lot about the extraordinary practitioner, but the extraordinary practitioner is not known in the industry as an industry leader, a conference speaker, or even a business continuity ninja. But he or she is recognized within their own organization as someone who consistently contributes value and often speaks with insights that no one else has. Why? Because they know the organization in and out. They know the processes, they know the functions, they know the dependencies, they even know a lot of the different managers and how their people look to their managers as far as being a leader is concerned. So those are the 4 things that we actually just talked about a second ago. So let's follow up with that. Business is about results. So the business continuity program objective, and it took me quite a few different revisions, different reiterations, to finally come up with something that I really like. Because I didn't want to be just about tornadoes, although we experienced pretty close to experience one just last week. But how can we add value to achieve a state of readiness and resiliency to face any adversity or challenge with minimal impacts? Every program that has any kind of salt to it has 4 cornerstones: the practitioner himself, herself, the program strategies and methodologies, the service delivery model, and the governance, compliance, and maturity. I will tell you that if you Google business continuity, most of the things that will come up is going to be under cornerstone 2, the program strategies and methodologies. Very little is actually said about the competencies and skills that a practitioner needs to grow in the business. I don't know anybody actually who talks about a service delivery model on how I'm going to implement this particular program, except those who have technology tools. And those get pretty doggone complicated and usually takes a very long time to implement. But service delivery to me is making it as easy as we can for people to participate in the business. And then the last thing, and probably one of the newer ones, is that we've been really focused on governance. Now, again, if you're regulated, you've been looking at that for a long time, compliance and maturity. How can I grow my business continuity program year after year? Not by, lightning bolts, but just by taking one step every few months that my program looks absolutely better. So what are some of the different principles that we live by? You have these on your handout again, so I'm not going to cover them a lot. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I can tell you that after 25 years, there are some problems in our industry that's never been solved. Just a footnote. And then the second one basically is I believe that we should work harder on ourselves than we actually do on the job. Because when we become more valuable to the company, it's only because we spend a lot of time developing ourselves, trying to understand the company, and purposely wanting to provide value to the organization itself. Business continuity has an opposing enemy, and it's called average. I think that some of the problems that we still have today that we've had for a very, very long time is because we are average. We haven't catapulted out of that vague idea of what business continuity can contribute to the day-to-day operations. And I call it average. We've got to become much more than that. And then one thing that I actually talk about in the BC primer training a lot is bring your best and do your best every day. Bringing your best is all about being prepared to start when you're supposed to start, being there on time. Doing your best is consciously thinking about how you can do your work a little bit better today than you did yesterday. And if we made at least marginal progress within our program in this whole year, then we're doing just fine, because absolutely nobody can ask you to bring more than your best or to do more than your best. So I think a lot about the practitioner. I think a lot about my career and the people that I've known through the years. And I've actually put together a career progression. I've never seen one of these in this industry. I know that we've, again, pulled a few workshops and webinars on practitioners and some competencies and skills and things like that. But if you are just beginning in business continuity, you'd want to start over on the left. You would be considered a novice. And it's important to know where you fall on this graph, because it will have huge implications on how you want to get to the next level, or even if you want to get to the next level. So we have entry level on the left, Basically, if you're like 70 or 80% of us, we did not choose business continuity, but our managers chose it for us. So we start like crazy Googling and searching and maybe finding a book or two on business continuity. We start reading, we start looking. If we know anybody who's done business continuity in the past, we're going to call them up on the phone and get as much answers and stuff like that as we can. And but it's basically because someone has chosen that for you. Now, if you semi like it and not trying to escape doing the business continuity program, then you probably might want to go to the next level, which would be, I need a little bit more training than just Googling or reading a couple of books here and there. So where can I go to get equipped, especially in the basics? And I really want to do a good job because, hey, this seems like it'd be a pretty good career. I kind of like it. The next level will actually be skills. Now you've made a personal choice to pursue business continuity as a career, that you want to become a pretty decent practitioner. It's a personal choice. A lot of times you can find a mentor. Bob at DRJ has his mentoring program for that. You're in the pursuit of knowledge, especially if you want to specialize in business continuity, crisis management, disaster recovery, vendor continuity. And I'll actually introduce a fourth one here a little bit later in our webinar. And you might even want to obtain a certification because there's nothing like a few letters after your name to tell your boss that you've been trained. And you can even ask for a little bit more salary because you are certified. That's coming from BC Management and Cheyenne's group. Okay. Then the next one is, okay, well, I've been at this now for a few years. I continue to go to courses. I continue to go to workshops, webinars, conferences like the DRJ in March in Orlando. I go to everything and anything I can as often as I can, because when I was at the talented level, I came home to my wife and I said, hey, I found out what I want to do when I grow up. And so this is exactly what it looked like. So now you become confident once you've got some experience behind you. You're a full-blown practitioner in a sense, where you can take a program, maybe not start from scratch if that's not what your thing is, but take whatever program and mend it, fix it, make it even a little bit better than it has been in the past. If you want to manage other practitioners and so forth, you can move into the manager, director, or even vice president level, but you're competent. And then if you really like this stuff, I mean, you just can't get enough of this stuff, then you probably want to be a master class, an expert. And an expert, and there's a huge difference in between being competent and an expert, because I really thought that if I focus first on my own organization, then I'm probably not an industry leader. I might speak at conferences, I might write a few articles, respond to some things on LinkedIn or Twitter or something similar to that. But I'm really looking on how I can increase the value of who I am to the company. If you happen to be an industry leader and speaker and writer and all of that, I mean, that's great. I mean, I'm not minimizing that at all because I do a lot of that. But that's up to you. Now you're looking at this and say, Phil, that looks like an awful lot of work. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, yep, it is. It takes a lot of time to get from being a novice to being an expert. They say that 10 years, if you know nothing about something, that you can actually be an industry expert in 10 years. I think it's probably a little bit shorter than that here, but it'll all depend on I'm reading from the bottom here, you're continuously being engaged, committed, and taking courageous steps and furthering your career, and more than even again working on your company, but improving yourselves. So the BC Primer course is all about the novice and the talented area. That's exactly what they need for the first year to 2 years of becoming a practitioner. If you've already been formally trained, I can tell you that some of our students are certified, and they take our course, the BC Primer, and they absolutely said, I wish I'd have taken this one first. So where does that professional practitioner, because I use that word a lot. Well, you could be a professional anywhere along this chart, all the way from the novice all the way to the expert. because you have elevated attributes. What you're looking for are outcome and results that's going to contribute to the growth of the company that I'm working for somehow or another. Again, you might save some time, energy, and money and these kind of things, but that's what a professional looks like. Can you be these without being a professional? Yeah, it's called average. Anyway, my opinion. And then you get to the extraordinary. And you can begin becoming the extraordinary from the very beginning at the novice all the way through the expert. Because it's not about what you see on the screen. Extraordinary is setting yourself apart from the crowd. Because there are a lot of people within this industry that has a lot of legacy thinking. They're going about doing the same thing that they did 10, 15, or even 5 years ago without making some changes and improvements along the way. But that's what I mean about extraordinary. Now there is a life balance that I want to say that, I don't expect everybody to pursue this with everything they have, because I found out that a balanced lifestyle is much more important, and I think that's what most people are learning today. And that's one of the reasons why we have a couple of crises continuing over and over and over again. So anyway, any questions on that, throw them into the chat. No career is a straight line. It's kind of like a stair step that, we learn some stuff and then we implement it. We learn some more stuff, we implement it, learn some more stuff, we implement it, and on and on and on we go. Because no career is a straight line from being a novice to being an expert. So in 2021, we learned that we're in the people business, that it is a team sport. Not so much that we didn't know we needed people, but how much more did it emphasize over this last year? Also, we started thinking about the human requirements, which is different than what business continuity would normally look at. Usually we would just leave that up to HR. But coming alongside HR and the senior leadership, we wanted to help whenever way we can on the human requirements. And again, you can see some of the things I'm thinking about. And then the new one that we've been dabbling in for 6-7 years now is vendor continuity. I think that we're going to focus on that a whole heck of a lot more moving forward, because that's what we learned this past year, is the importance of critical vendors. I call it vendor continuity. You got to have a program at least for your top vendors. And then I kept hearing, stuff about the new normal. What's this new normal going to look like? And so much so that actually in one of my webinars, I said, the least important thing that you need to think about, study, research is what the new normal is going to look like. Not because you're never going to find out, because by the time you even get there, the goalposts are going to change again. So I was actually talking with a friend of mine the other day, and he goes, yeah, I don't call it new normal anymore. I call it the next normal. Oh, that's so good. What's the next normal? Again, you want to pay attention to what this next normal might be, but you really want to manage your time on how much you think we can predict what that next normal looks like. And if you're going to focus on that next normal, I would focus internally on the organization that you work for. Okay? Any questions? Put them in the chat. That would be awesome. So what are the 8 must-haves on the 2022 program? First of all, your program needs to be simple. You need to make it as easy as you can for people to participate in the business. Anything that is complex is not going to be embraced by the business units because they got enough to work with. They got enough complications in what they do every day. And so we want to make it as easy as we can to participate. And I can tell you that as I go through, well, I'll tell you at the end. We'll go on. The other thing that I've actually emphasized over the last year and a half is what we call essentialism, or focusing on what is essential or what essential becomes our priority. Because I guarantee you, as a practitioner, you can go in 100 different directions and work hard and accomplish a lot. But is it essential to your program? Is it going to get you the outcomes and the results that you've determined what that would be at the beginning of the year. That's why I wanted to go through this, and we'll go into that in just a minute. But my favorite term is cut it in half. I don't know if you've ever seen The River Runs Through It. In there, the father of the two sons says, cut it in half. Cut it in half again. And he comes back the third time and then throws his paper in and goes fishing. So, but cut it in half. Imagine that business continuity program, just cut in half, because is what we're doing busy work, or is it really producing the outcome and the results that we really want? Being a entrepreneur, in a sense, there was a term 10 years ago or so, is that you want to become a value-added service to a software company or something similar to that. So I'm thinking that, well, as a practitioner, I want my program to add value, and I know it is a service. We are providing a service, and I know there's a lot of people in the industry that doesn't look at it that way, that we're providing a program or a project or plans or passing audit, but it really is a service to the rest of the organization. If you'll take that servant attitude, that servant mindset, the things that you do within your organization would be embraced and accepted a whole heck of a lot more easier. Notice I put understanding the culture, focusing on outcomes and self-development, because the most important value that you can add to your organization is your growth. The service delivery model that I talked about before, we can talk for a whole hour on that, but basically it's not just going out and building plans. You have to determine how you're going to implement your program. And the more you know what the requirements are, the more you know what business units are going to be doing what, the more that you work with them and all that other kind of stuff. If you engage them, equip them, and empower them, you're going to increase the significance of your program. So we want to be singly focused. What's important now, again, is that doing 1,000 things and only moving one step forward. I think we should do one or two things and move 10 feet forward in half as much time. And when we're singly focused, that is huge. Now, let me tell you what I started to think about in September or October timeframe of this year, just a couple of months ago. I started noticing that I was distracted often. I opened up my browser and there's all kinds of things on my browser that caught my attention. I have my cell phone over on, I bought a new stand for my cell phone, and it stands up a foot off 10 inches off the desk. I'm going to throw it away because every time that thing notifies me about something, it lights up and it draws my attention to it. And it just, so anyway, I've been really thinking about distractions. As a matter of fact, I'm going to either write something or do a webinar on just distractions itself and how to eliminate those. Because I would imagine that as much chaos, as much as uncertainty, and as much change that's happened, there is a lot of people being distracted by a lot of different things that doesn't add and contribute to the company that they're working for. A lot can be said about that. Shiftability, I got this from my friend Hendry. There's the great resignation going on because people just don't want to go back to the old workplace and work the same thing the way they've been doing for 20 years. They want to choose something differently. Shiftability, here's the new term that I'm bringing to the table, is virtual continuity, because that is definitely different than business continuity when everybody's in a brick and mortar building or facility or office or scattered about. I mean, what are the principles of virtual continuity when you have 1,000 employees and half of those work from home 100% of the time, or 4 days a week, or 3 days a week? What does that virtual continuity look like? That's a challenge, by the way. So, and I think that your program should be much more structured than it is. I kind of alleviated on it a little bit earlier. We need to know why we're doing the program. We need to have the strategy defined within our program. First of all, with our objective, which is one of the first slides that I showed you up on top. And then we have to have a maturity model because I guarantee you that the senior leaders want to know what you're doing with their investment. And then the last one is a surprise, and that should be the critical 5 next. Okay, so what I want you to do is I don't expect you to do all 8 of these. What I want you to do is just pick 2. Pick 2 and 22. And because again, if we're doing too much, we won't make any measurable progress in a reasonable amount of time. But if we just pick 2 that we believe would have the highest impact, the greatest contribution, and the greatest significant change to our program that would add value to the company that we're working with, how much better if we just do 2 than trying to do 5, 6, or 7, or even 8. Okay, so pick 2. The first one is simplicity. We want to make it as easy as you can for people to do business with us. Here's some game changers. I've talked about these 3 pillars of resiliency. When we focus not on the plans, but what are the 3 components? They are people, documentation, and resources. How easy is that to understand from a business unit? Again, making it as easy as we can to participate in the program. The denial of asset strategy, instead of doing worst case, we have 5 assets that will either be impacted or have consequences based on any kind of disaster or crisis. Well, what are they? Well, if we can just concentrate on those 5 or 6 or 5, how much easier again than worst case scenario? Because I can guarantee you, whenever I use the word worst case scenario in front of any business unit, they roll their eyes because they know that the probability and the believability of that occurring is practically nil, and they definitely don't want to participate in anything that's a practically nil. That will never happen. BC plans I'm going to talk about a little bit later. And then I've actually broken down the principles of implementation, where we just don't talk about the rules, we talk about the principles and how you can implement those within the organization that you're working with. So the next thing is essentialism. Talked about that, cutting through the nonsense and the noise. Again, cutting it in half and much. So I did a Google research, and I wanted to look at a table of contents for a BC plan. The first one that I came up with had 33 sections and 72 subsections. Now these are templates. Some of them you can buy, some of them you can't. Some of them are free. The second example had 45 sections in it. The third sample had 14 plus tables or dictionaries, and that was a database tool that actually came up in my search. But look at what the BC primer course has. We have a IRG, initial response guide. It's got 2 sections and 4 subsections. And the BC plan has 11 sections and 13 subsections. So in total, we got 13 sections and 17 subsections, and you can see the 2 on the right. The first one, the initial response guide, is anything everybody needs or everything everybody needs within the first 2 to 4 hours of the event. And I do know that, and then everything else that we don't need within that first half a day or full day, I mean, again, you can set your own parameters for that, is contained in the business unit plan, the business continuity plan itself. Okay, much thicker and much bigger. But I also wanted to say something about megadata. And you'll hear people say that megadata, you've got to have it in order to become resilient. And I'm going to challenge that assertion by saying that the amount of data you collect has little bearing on your resiliency. I guarantee you'll have a lot of information, a lot of good information, and probably some information that people will need over the next 5 or 6 or 8 days or whatever it might be. But it's not the amount of data that you collect. It's the value of that data you collect that's going to help in the response and the setting of response priorities and so forth. Okay. Here's another way. Training. I've been teaching this for years, so I'm not going to go over it too much. Why do we do an hour training? Why don't we do 7 to 12 minutes? Now, this is directed toward people in the business units. I know this webinar is an hour. Because you're practitioners, and again, you need to know a whole heck of a lot more than people in the business units. Because a lot of times we think that, well, we just need to make mini me's out of people in the business unit, but that's just not true. We just need to train them on what they need to know to respond, restore, and recover their particular business unit. So I do short sessions rather than one long training. Actually, the BC Primer course has 9 skills, actually 7 true skills, and 32 sections of 20 minutes each. So you can see even each section is very short, 18 to 22 minutes, I think they are, or something like that. Okay, anyway, you should do that on your training anytime you're trying to train the people within your organization. Then that value added service, again, you are the message. As much as we don't maybe want to be the message or are scared to death about being the message, you are the message. I'll tell you the people who have it incredibly fortunate, and that's the people who are not by themselves, who actually has a team they're working with. And it could just be 2 people or 5 people or 10 people, or in a company that we're working with, 125 people. So, but you are the message no matter how many people are on your team. And people can see just by your behavior, what you talk about, how serious you are about your job and the accomplishment of the goals that you want to achieve. So you are the message. Again, it's not just what you do that matters, because I think we've been doing that for a long time. It's how you go about doing it that has the greatest influence for achievement. And I've found out just recently, last 6 months, execution trumps knowledge every time. Here's what the senior leadership focus on. Again, I will tell you this: the senior leaders are not experts at business continuity. We are responsible to bring to the table our expertise, understanding of the company, and the understanding of resiliency principles or response principles to the senior leadership to guide and help and give them the information they need in order to make good, wise, and prudent decisions. So again, this is pretty straightforward and logical. The first question that was ever asked of me after about 2 or 3 years of doing this from a senior leader was, "Hey, Phil, can we recover?" I thought about that for years. I said, if a senior leader asked me one question, what would it be? Oh, can we recover? Wow, how powerful. Not if we can pass audit, not how many people's plans are updated, how many exercises we did. He didn't ask any of that stuff. He just wanted to know, can we recover? It's pretty powerful. Changed my life. The service delivery, we want to make it as easy as we can for people to participate in the program. I know you've already heard, make it as easy as you can. But here's the second layer for people to participate in your program. Here is the principles of implementation that I've actually put together. Outcome focused and capability centric, people not paper. I'm actually giving a workshop at DRJ in March called 2.5 hours on people not paper. And we want to make it as easy for people to participate. We want to cut it in half, and it happens by design, not by accident. And that's so true. Here's a service delivery model. A lot of times the BC team acts as a broker to the business units, and we're going to help them update their plans and do the work for them and all these other kind of things. And I find that when the business units participate in the program, help define the program, and then help to find the strategies and everything else that's needed, that there's so much more buy-in, participation, and ownership in what they do. And so we should be coaches. We should be advisors. We should be encouragers of people in the business units to do their program, their way, their plan. Because I guarantee you, as a business continuity practitioner, when an event occurs, you can't recover everybody. All right. Here's something else that you want to know, and one reason why I always use PowerPoints, even though people tell you, "Oh, well, don't use PowerPoint." No, I'm a trainer. I know how to train adults. I do it differently than most, I will tell you. But according to this chart, anything that you hear, you've lost 70% of the retention within the first hour. If you see something, then you've lost 75% of it the first hour. I'm absolutely reversed on that. 70% audio, you'll remember it 70% of it the first hour, and then it quickly goes downhill from there. Visual is 75% you will actually retain if you can actually see it. And then when you actually hear it and see it at the same time, that's why I use so many different graphics and so forth and so on. And you can look at the National Training Laboratories chart over on the right, that audio and visual 20%. But if we actually demonstrate something, just have a discussion group about something, and that's why business continuity, I believe, is a team sport, is that we have to have groups, teams. The team of teams is what I call them. And then we want to practice what we're doing. Those are all about the exercises and so forth. And then if you want to really be good, which is, I think, part of the business continuity practitioner's job, is to teach others within the organization. Not everything that you know, but just what they need to know. Okay, being singly focused, measurable progress in a reasonable amount of time. That's a pretty doggone good saying as well. If you don't measure the progress, you're not going to progress. And if you can't measure it, then why are we doing it? And that's within a reasonable amount of time. You've seen these before, so I'm not going to do that too much. But whatever became of the critical 5 questions that we had at the beginning, did you answer those? What is going to happen? Oh, something didn't work right. But anyway, we'll just continue. Excuse me. Shiftability. This is my favorite saying: anticipate, stimulate, and embrace change. Anticipate that change is going to come from outside your little tribe. Stimulate change, meaning, hey, you're a change agent. You're going to share your ideas, whether people like them or not. And a lot of times they won't, but that shouldn't stop you. Just go back and think about it a little bit more. And don't try to sell an idea. Share fairly and intentionally what is true and what reality says about whatever your idea says or is about. And then embrace change. So anticipate it from others, stimulate it yourself, and embrace change no matter where it comes from. Because we're living in a, I thought 10 or 15 years ago, we couldn't get any faster change in everything, but we are today. And we have to learn to work within the boundaries of whatever organization we work with. Okay. Here's a shiftability. Here's a chart that a client actually generated. Left of the red line is the industry standard. They kept track of how many people were trained, how many people participated in the training, how many people basically were engaged. And then they did the rapid continuity methodology in December of 2012. So this is a few years ago, but look at the increase. The green actually is the increase of the participation level, simply because of the methodology or the principles that I showed you back on this slide when we talk about short, quick training. Teach them what they need to do to take the next step. Teach them a second time to do what they need to do for the next step. Teach them a third time what that third step is, because I can't begin to tell you how many consultants that I had worked for me. Well, actually none, because we trained them, but who had told me that people would come to a BIA workshop. So we had 4 different workshops, 1 a week, every other week, and we were looking to do the project in 2 months. So on Monday, the first phase of people and the business units, and then so in one of the weeks, we gave all the different business units the same exact training. And come Wednesday of the following week, when we went out to this business unit, we got them all in the classroom again, or the workshop room, and they're sitting there going, what's a BIA? So again, they're not paid to do this per se. That's not how they derive their paycheck. We do, but they don't. So we want to make it as easy as we can. And one way we can do that is have 10 or 15-minute training modules, and that's it. Train them one thing at a time. Well, I'm giving you this a second time, actually. The length of the training, content series, interactivities, especially with people in the business units. I not only do tabletop exercises, but I do something what we call functional exercises. Remember the functional exercises we used to do at rope courses and leadership meetings and catching each other and all these other kind of things? It's those kind of games that you can actually conduct within your own organization that really gets people pumping for this stuff, because it's different than what they do every day. It does take a while to learn how to do that. It does take some research to find out which ones would actually work in your organization. But I'm telling you, you don't have to worry about buy-in if you start conducting 1 or 2 of those a year for most of the people. Anyway, structured, we talked about this, simple tools to get the things right. That is one thing that the BC Primer course has, is 72 different tools: Excel, Word, PowerPoint, graphics, drawings, or a maturity model, much like what you see here, within the program itself. So if you got a direction that you're looking to achieve and you communicate that with the people in the business units, you'll get a much higher level of buy-in. And then, what are your ideas? I just gave you 7. What's missing in your program? What's not working in your program? And what do you think needs to change? And if none of the things that I just mentioned you think would not work for you, that's fine. That's okay. Because every organization is different and every practitioner is different, especially how they go about implementing different things. But there are some principles and some strategies that actually work in 90% of the cases. So, and if you don't know what that is, say if you've only got a year or 2 and you don't know what's missing or not working or needs to change, get involved in that mentoring program or call somebody who is seasoned. If you're taking the BC Primer course, you can always call me. I'm available by email, and we have meetings every 2 weeks. It's for an hour long, and we're there answering each other's questions with all the students within the Primer course itself. Okay? Because I felt like it was critically important. I almost cried trying to figure out how to implement this thing when all I knew was the rules. I didn't have any. I had a template that was printed out in the back of a workbook, and that's the only tool that I had to implement the program. I had nothing else. And so again, in this particular training, you'll get 72 tools to help you out. So pick 2 and 22, and if one of those happens to be yours, as a matter of fact, I recommend you pick that first and put that as your priority, because what you think your program needs is going to be much more powerful than anything I might think of. Okay? Although hopefully I've stimulated your imagination. Hopefully I've stimulated some thought processes, some ideas on what you can change moving forward. And I would say, again, pick 1, pick 2, and at least for right now, I wouldn't pick more than 2. Now, if you're moving like the Roadrunner and these first 2 ideas, then pick up idea 3 in June, July, or August sometime or something like that. There's, again, you go at your own pace on all this, because the only thing that we want to do is to make sure you bring your best and do your best every day. So the BC Primer course, again, this is a lot in your handout. So when you look at the graph again, we're looking at the novice or the talented. If you've been trained and you're skillful and want to kind of take a refresher, we would highly recommend that as well, because I think there's some things in here that they're just not covering in any other course. Matter of fact, I know that for a fact. Okay, so in your handout also, you got the 7 skills that we cover, and they're all broken down into the sessions. You'll see the 32 sessions as well. I'm going to leave this up. Bob, I'm almost finished. I don't know if there's questions that came through or anything like that, but here's what a lot of the people who took the course said about the course itself. We're getting 4.5 out of 5 stars by everyone who has taken the course so far, almost everyone. And if we did an average, it would be 4.4, I believe, or something like that. I haven't done the average in like a little over a month, but I've seen the surveys and things, and actually people are liking the course a lot. So I highly recommend it, of course. If you sign up by January 4th, you get a free bonus session. Now, it's understanding organizational culture. And in order to do a lot of these other things, one of the things you need to have under your belt is an understanding of what organizational culture is. How do we operate in it? Does the culture set up roadblocks so that we kind of get bloody noses all the time? How are people influential and not influential within their culture, and why? I mean, there's a whole heck of a lot of things that you're going to learn, and this will be a free session, no charge. I will tell you that I'm not done with the revised yet, but I will have it done by either December 31st or January 4th or 5th, something like that. So, but if you sign up by January 4th, so we're actually, if you don't have the budget in your manager or whatever this year, then maybe grab it in the first couple of days next year. If you take a little bit of time to get the money from somewhere or whatever, then we wanted to do that. We didn't want to say, hey, you got to sign up within 24 hours or it's gone. So that gives you a little over 2 weeks, actually, to almost 3 weeks to sign up for the BC Primer course. If you want more information on the course, it's at drj.com/academy, and you'll see everything is there. So my last question is, in 5 years, you will arrive. The question is, where? And where will be fully defined by you. And don't let anyone else tell you where you ought to be in 5 years. Define it for yourself and pursue it. And if it's 3 feet from where you're at today, awesome. If it's 100 miles from where you're at today, awesome. Just make sure that it's you and what you want to accomplish. Okay, I'm done, Bob. Actually,
All right,
short, so.
wonderful. We have a few questions. If we don't get to your questions here today, Phil and the DRJ team will have access to these questions, and we'll follow up with you after the webinar's ended. So take one quick one here. This one's pretty timely. Any suggestions or thoughts on gaining management approval for taking formal training?
Yeah. First of all, the first thing I would do if I were in your shoes is, why are you doing the program at all? And if we can't define why senior leader says that we ought to be doing this program, because every business continuity practitioner has some kind of buy-in, otherwise they wouldn't get a paycheck. So there is some kind of buy-in. So we have to know what that is. Now, if it's only for regulations, you can leverage that for sure about the audit and how much better the audit would be if you only took some formal education. I will tell you that when people first think about business continuity, they think it's real easy. They think back of elementary school and having fire drills, or back in my day, civic drills for radiation and all these other kind of things. But and that seems easy. Well, I can do that for business, but once you dive into this thing, once you get past that novice and equipped section, it gets pretty doggone complicated. And that's why I keep saying we've got to keep it simple for people. And Einstein says if we don't know how to keep it simple, then we don't know it well enough. So if you want to email me personally, whoever asked that particular question, I'll be more than happy to ask you a few questions about what that looks like, and maybe come up with a strategy on that is something we are going to be addressing next year in an advanced level, is how to obtain ownership, engage, equip, and empower people and the senior leadership as well. And we'll give you some strategies on doing that. But if you want to email me, I'll be more than happy to call you on the phone and answer. That's kind of complicated. And again, it would be based on your culture and who your senior leadership is and what drives the program.
All right, wonderful. Any parting words here today, Phil? We're at the top of the hour. So again, if we didn't get to your question, we will follow up with everyone after the webinar's ended. So any parting words here today, Phil?
I don't know where you are on, let me see if I can turn, I don't know where you are on this career progression timeline, but if you're down in the novice or talented area, or just, just starting to learn some skills and so forth, there is no greater place to, there is no greater opportunity that I know of. Uh, we have more job openings now than we have people to fill them, more jobs than I've ever seen. But you got to at least be skilled, because people don't hire the novice or the talented. They usually raise them up within their own organizations and so forth. And I think it's a lot of fun because I know more about the company. I kind of manage my day. I don't have people lording over me or telling me what to do or whatever, because it's, I'm generating a program based on my advisory board within the organization. Again, the team of teams and the team sport aspect of it all. And we've got buy-in on what we're doing, and we're showing them how we're making measurable progress on a regular basis. So I just want to encourage you that if you're just looking for a place to land, give this a try. And one of your pick two for 22, if it's the BC primer, we'll be more than happy to work with you, because you have access to that training for 6 months, and you get 6 months of one-on-one help and one in small group help from other people taking the course at the same time. So anyway, that would be my encouragement. And I'm saying that not to benefit me, but to benefit the industry, because we need to raise the bar and stop being average and build and be that extraordinary practitioner that organizations need.
All right, wonderful. Thanks again, everyone, for your attendance here today. We hope you gather some great information from today's webinar. I'd like to personally thank Phil for his time here today. We look forward to hearing any questions or comments you might have about the topics covered today, and or the DRJ Academy as well. So if you have any additional questions, please contact Disaster Cover Journal. Thank you again, and this now ends today's webinar. Thanks,
Awesome.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.